Just wanted to get your take on one, the locker room feel, the group after, a couple of losses and the opportunity that this Chicago game brings.
Well, the locker room is, obviously it's still a good one. They're not, the team has gone through some ups and downs in its, existence since I've taken over. So, the game against Portland, what did I want? I wanted them to come back and play a good game. I think Nashville, was disappointing that we lost 1-0 because the goal we gave up certainly was not indicative of, who we are. But overall, if you watch the game, I mean, we had a ton of good chances. The first half played about as, well as I thought it could have. We wanted to make sure we got out of the half at 0-0. They had some set pieces that, look, they were dangerous because of Zimmerman and their delivery. But as far as open play chances, I really didn't think they created very much. So I thought that was okay. And then the second half, I think our offense was a little bit better, a little bit sharper and cleaner. So I think you could say that the game against Nashville, that was always going to be a hard game. I thought that game was okay. So leads us to the third game in a week, and Chicago, it's a tricky team. I mean, they had a good result against Toronto. They still have good players. We'll see. But to answer your question, they're fine, totally fine. The mood of the team is fine, determined, I would say.
Was your messaging any different going into this one?
Into Chicago?
Yeah, into Chicago. Did you say anything different to the guys in terms of this game?
No. I just said we got to cut down on the mistakes. The individual mistakes. It's always funny, Nico. If your team isn't doing well, and it's because, okay, this guy made, an error somewhere, and then this guy made an error, and somebody else, and they're different individuals are making different mistakes, you kind of have to live with that because nobody's perfect. If the team was out of sync, like with their tactics or, finishing, I guess, would be my only counterpoint. I mean, I think we could be more clinical in our finishing, our final third movements. But really, overall, the tactics and the way the team shape is and all of that through, some rotated lineups because of injuries and other considerations, that's where I'd be worried. But, I think we've given up a couple of points because of some uncharacteristic individual decisions.
Brian, on that, is there some thought about players trying too hard and then making those mistakes?
Yeah. Maz, that's a great question because I told them before the Nashville game, and I actually said it after Portland as well. One guy can't pull us out of a slump. One guy can't win a game for us. They have to rely on each other. They have to trust each other. You always have to start with yourself first, make sure you're playing well. And then, then you can start being, holding your teammates accountable, but you have to be good first. And you can't do it on your own. It's a team sport.
And then
Brian, based on, go ahead, Moss.
Yeah, last one. I'm just going to say, any updates rotational-wise, not lineups, you're good about that, but injury-wise, anything, Nick's anything come up or guys are ready?
Matt'll give you the injury report. It's still I think it's still JP, Obed, Raul, and I'm missing one, Matt. Who's the fourth one?
Steph in the health.
Steph. Yeah. So, 4 starters. I mean, we're missing 4 starters, Maz. I don't like that, but we still got a strong squad.
Thanks.
Hey, Brian, based on what you saw from Danny Leyva on Wednesday, did he make a good argument to get more playing time based on his performance?
Yep. Jackson, I don't know where you're at the stadium. What are you doing there? Working?
I'm here at the station, actually. This is our new
at the
dig.
station. Oh, that's your station. Okay. No, I mean, Danny played well against Toronto. He came on and made a big impact against Nashville. His name is certainly going to be written somewhere on the lineup sheet, but it's going to be written down because the kid deserves to get a chance.
Yeah, and just in general, what did you see from him on Wednesday? What stood out about he came on the field and how he changed the game based on the strategy?
Well, the game was a good setting to introduce both him and Will. They were trying to protect the lead. The game was already kind of cooked. It was already baked. It was already going to happen the way it, started in that second half. They were just going to drop off and try and catch us on some counterattacks. And, Danny, when he has time and space, he's a real good connector. And so he would find the right pass at the right moment to the right person. And that's what made us look so much better. Just that one guy connecting, kind of orchestrating, a lot of our starting moments in our attack. So kudos to the kid, but the game was, set up well for him and his strengths.
Brian, Will Bruin, he didn't get that many touches against Nashville if you brought him in, but he was a presence around the penalty area. It seemed he gave the midfielders more space, much like Jackson asked you with Danny. Do you feel like that there'll be a chance for Will to get more playing time?
Yeah, I got to rotate Will and Freddie a little bit while Raul's out. I'll probably, give them both opportunities when I, think that the game is good for one or the other. But Will certainly deserves a shot at starting as well, for sure.
Also, Chicago's had some better results recently. You mentioned the result against Toronto. They also beat Philadelphia, who we all know is one of the toughest teams in the league to score against. Well, what do you think they're doing better, and what kind of personnel do you think they have, and what are the keys to the game for you where you want to get the result that you want, which of course is a victory?
Yeah. So Chicago has good players. I mean, they've got a talented roster. When I watch them play, it's just, are they cohesive? Are they playing together as a group? How does, Shaq's inclusion into the mix, with Jimenez, an Argentinian, and, the young goalkeeper certainly has a bright future, but he's young. And, some of the guys that have been in that, franchise for a while, how do they gel together? There's signs of it. The kid that scored the 2 goals against Toronto, he was a signing, but he's still young. How does he, incorporate himself within the group? Can he have repeat performances? Because sometimes young players go up and down. So I just think overall they have a good team. It's just the consistency of them playing well. That's what Ezra has to try and figure out. And so for us, we know how we're going to play. We're very confident in who we are, and we'll just try and use that to our advantage.
Was there any text going on between you and your friend there, or do you guys kind of shut off communication?
No, we went out to dinner last night.
There you go.
Ezra's great. Look, Chicago hasn't done that well, but I really hope that he gets a good chance, a good run out. They have had some injuries. I hope they give Ezra a good shot at it because he's a great coach and he's got a real good eye for talent. So, I wish him the best. And, we had a good time reminiscing over dinner, some of the stories that we had together, starting off in 2009 when I first met him, when Zig was still there, and all of those years, and him coaching S2 and, all of that. So we had a good time.
And Brian, do you have a good story from that time with Ezra that highlights his personality and who he is as a coach?
Well, I always loved Ezra for his belief in how he wants to play. So I remember there were times when, again, I wasn't the head guy, Ziggy was, but Ezra wasn't afraid. And he and Ziggy had a long history together. And Ezra would come and just say these things, and Ziggy would kind of like, perk up like this because it wasn't what Ziggy saw, or it wasn't what, Ziggy thought. And so, he was never shy to give Ziggy his opinion. And, then he wasn't on my staff originally because he had taken the S2 job. But I remember there were times when he was coaching S2 and I'd go to the games and, I'd walk off with him after the game and he'd ask me questions. And, all I tried to do was just give him not the answers that I, thought myself. I always tried to get him to think about his solutions. I didn't want to give him an opinion just as a solution. And he respected that. He respected that I didn't tell him, hey, Ezra, you should do this. It was, hey, Ezra, this is what I saw. Did you see the same thing? Or, just an open-ended question. So we've always had good conversations, but he's got a real strong opinion about players that he likes and how he wants to play.
And Brian, what did you make of Javi's return from injury?
Yeah, it was a cameo at the end of the game. He was okay. We'll be careful with him because look, I'm a little bit gun shy with injuries. Guys coming back from injury, so we'll have to make sure that we tread carefully there. But he was fine. I mean, he's anxious. He's chomping at the bit, Jeremiah. He wants to get back at it. I think there's healthy competition there, because they understand that Jackson's pretty good, so I think there's a little bit of, drive there. Javi gets back in. He obviously wants to, end the season well on a high note, for his next team. So he's been good.
And I guess on the same note, Jackson obviously missed the last game for the red card. Does that impact his place in the rotation, or does he just sort of like slide back into where he was before?
He'll slide back in. I mean, I'm not going to punish the kid. I mean, he's still young as far as his MLS career is concerned. So, it was a learning experience. I talked to him about it. He's fine. He'll shrug it off. He'll be good.
Coach, now that you've got time to look over the game at Nashville, what were your overall thoughts of Nico and Rusnak playing that holding mid, specifically on that formation?
Yeah, it's something, Nico, that really wasn't that successful in that first half of that game. Again, was it because of the way Nashville was pressing? Were we less creative in the offensive part of the field because, Nico wasn't higher up the field? Those two guys are not, Nico, they're not natural number 6s or 8s, whatever you want to call them. I think when JP and Albert were together, I think that's a better pair. Even the kid and Albert, a little bit better, a little bit different. So on that one, I own that one. I put him there. It wasn't great, but then in the second half, when we switched to 4-2-3-1, I thought Nico opened up and he was good again.
And Chicago in their last game with John Duran, they seemed to really have their way when he came to get in behind that back line and using his speed. Are you looking into maybe being careful of how high you press that back line?
No, we've got really fast defenders. I mean, he turned the corner on Mavinga. He got in behind a couple of times, but how much pressure was on the ball? How much, time and space did he really have? I'm very confident with Yaimar, Nuhu, Alex, Javi, Jackson chased some guy back at home a while back, chased him 30 yards to slide tackle a ball away. So I'm not as concerned. Plus, we put a little bit more pressure higher up the field. You know, Toronto struggled in the game they played against us of, you know, trying to put us under some effective pressure. So I think that's why Duran got him behind.
Hey, Brian, speaking of Nuhu, I assert that it seemed like he was way up there, right? And actually was fluid in terms of the decision making and some of the passes. And obviously he almost scored. Have you seen a natural progression there, how he's come along on the last third of the field?
I'm sure we'll all maybe agree or disagree slightly whether he was the best sounder player on the field or not. But if he wasn't the best sounder player on the field, he was certainly the second best. I mean, I thought his performance was very, very good. Like you said, Maz, I think when he went forward, he chose the right times, because sometimes he runs forward just to, you know, excite the crowd or, you know, whatever, you know, or he dribbles by himself up the field and he has nowhere to go. So I think number one, his decisions when he went forward were good. And then when he did find himself in advanced positions, he was effective, because the ball to Will maybe was a little bit behind Will. Will had a little bit, it looked a little live. It looked like maybe Will should have scored, but it was a little bit behind him. Certainly on the ball that their goalkeeper saved, knew who was in an advanced good position, the give and go. I thought Nuhu was very, very good and very effective, more so than he has been in the past in that final attacking third.
Thanks.
Any final questions for Coach Schmetzer?
Yeah, just another kind of fitness question. Obviously Nico seems like he's come through pretty, not to jinx him or anything, but he seems like he's been pretty healthy. Is playing time still a concern for him, or is he sort of, it's like, you know, old Nico where you could play him as much as possible?
Well, we are watching that very closely. You know, my personal feeling, Jeremiah, is that, you know, Nico's had some injuries and he's kind of lost parts of the last 2 years due to those injuries. And so sometimes your body can heal up. You know, I've said this about Jordan, you know, hopefully it happens the same with JP. They take a year off to rehabilitate their injuries, and they're working in the weight room. They're getting stronger. They're maybe a better athlete even than before they were injured. And the toll on their body is less because they're not playing 34 games in a year. So, you know, in some ways, is Nico the beneficiary of, you know, having a couple of injury plagued seasons where he hasn't had that many games? Maybe, you know, maybe. But then to your point, to your question, no, we're watching him very closely. We're watching all of his, you know, training loads throughout the week and then the game loads, and, you know, trying to make good decisions as to when to give him a break and when to give him a rest. So we're watching that very closely.
Hey, Brian, I guess I'll throw this one out there. Seattle had such a good roster. You know, Garth has said that there's a possibility that maybe not much gets done this transfer window. When there's so much pressure from, you know, like the outside and other teams, what would you tell fans about this team, whether it is about the group and the resiliency, what they've been able to accomplish this year, that would kind of calm them from that need to have that new player, that brand new toy out there?
Well, what I would say is that we've already accomplished something that no other MLS team has accomplished. And I would never, ever, if I was a betting man, if I went to Vegas a lot or bet a lot or whatever, I would never count the Seattle Sounders out in any sort of playoff scenario. I think that our team has been battle hardened by, you know, 13 years of playoffs, good runs. You know, last year, certainly, okay, RSL, credit to them. But we're a pretty experienced team, and we've been through big moments. And so if we can, there's a big if, okay, so let's forecast that we're going to win some more games and we make the playoffs. You know, I wouldn't count us out. I wouldn't say that the Sounders can't go on a run with the roster that we have, because we'll have Raul back, we'll have Obed back, you know, we'll have Steph back. You know, it's a very good team, very, very good team.